I was invited to speak at the Industry Association meeting. When I finished speaking, Elaine came up and greeted me, and she said, "Are you sure this is going to work?" She said, "Well, all the people that sat around me at the speech said, this guy's crazier than hell. It ain't going to amount to a row of beans." I said, "Elaine, believe me, it's going to amount to more than a row of beans. It's going to be a great success."
And one of the things I said as a quality that Mark had was, he had the ability to look further into the future than most people. And the examples I gave were the examples from the cellular industry when I first got to know Mark 30 years ago. He just seemed to know, if you think about it, he was 25, 26 years old. This something called cellular was coming along, and he decided he wanted to get into that industry. He went out and he raised $1 million so he could file, in rounds, 1 through 60, with the Chase family, which he's going to talk about in a minute. He would say that, he saw the consolidation was going to happen before it happened, and he did what he did, to help that early consolidation in the cellular. I would say to you that, he looked at Morgan O'Brien and Fleet Call, and Morgan was my partner, and he saw the future and what Morgan wanted to do, more than I did, and he invested in Fleet Call. And Fleet Call and Nextel are, we all know what they turned out to be. Columbia Capital, he saw a need for, an investment bank that would be, wireless centric, and he started Columbia Capital. And 25 years later, Columbia Capital is still, one of the leaders in the wireless space. So he is, I got to tell you, I think the foundation made a inspired choice, making him one of their inductees of 2013. He deserves it, and I think you've heard enough about me, enough from me, and so there's a short video from Mark, telling you what he thinks about this all, about everything.
I was born in Indiana, grew up there, Illinois and Connecticut. First and only member of my family to graduate from college, went to George Washington University, then went off to law school at Harvard. Decided I didn't want to practice law. I decided I was going to go be an entrepreneur. Took my life savings, $5,000, invested it in a little energy startup company. Went to work for that company. In 6 weeks, I helped that company go totally bankrupt. Then went into real estate and failed at that after 6 months. So I think at the ripe old age of about 26, I was living out of my car, sleeping on my friends' couches. My student loans were coming due, but I was lucky enough to kind of get a third shot. A buddy of mine had invested in some of the earliest cellular licensing round, and it sounded to me like a good idea, and I went around and got a chance to make a presentation, particularly to a guy named David Chase up in Hartford, Connecticut. Came in and told him about this new opportunity in the wireless area called cellular telephones, and after about a 30-minute pitch, he committed. This was 1982, and the FCC had said one license in each market would go to an existing telephone company. The other license would go to some startup. And the FCC decided after the second and third round of applications that because it was so complicated to have a comparative hearing process, they'd just go ahead and have a lottery. It was a mass meeting where everyone decided that we'd throw in their interest together, and then they would, in effect, create trading chits. I became kind of the cellular broker for those license chips. It was the wild, wild west in the 80s. It was an area where there was a whole industry being created real time, but the real operations of what a cell phone company would look like, nobody really knew. And a friend of mine, Morgan O'Brien, we came up with the idea of the SMRS licenses, putting them all together. They were in spectrum right next door to the cellular spectrum. We didn't have much money, and we convinced a number of these operators to throw their lots in together. And we were literally down to our last pitch. A fellow who I'd known, a small investment banker named Peter Einheimer, on our last meeting after months and months of trying with the larger firm said, Mark, Morgan, this looks like a good idea. He thought he could raise us some capital, and we were off to the races. So this was Nextel. Then myself and 4 other guys, we'd amassed enough individual personal capital that we created Columbia Capital that became a venture fund that was focused on the wireless industry. We had a great success run. We invested in a number of switching companies that a number we sold to Ericsson. We aggregated and did other spectrum plays in smaller markets. We did a company that went ahead and established the towers and other kind of nitty-gritty work of how you get a cell phone company, a wireless company up and operating. My contribution might have been seeing that there was an enormous potential in this field. As governor, what I worked on a lot was deployment of broadband. When I moved to the Senate, that's where I've continued to focus my efforts. I serve on the Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction over the FCC. So whether it's amending the agriculture bill to try to redeploy some of the monies we spend for broadband deployment to make sure they're getting to unserved areas, to continuing to push the FCC to get more spectrum out. I think that continues to be a challenge. You know, I'm very lucky. I'm married, got 3 great daughters. You know, it's kind of hard with a family growing up with somebody in public life. So I know my family sacrificed a lot for me to be able to carry out what I always wanted to do, which was be in the public arena. I used to play basketball. My knees have kind of given up on me on that. I like to road bike. I like a good meal. I like a good glass of wine. And I've got a lot of great friends all across the country who I get a chance to try to do that with. This is an industry that I'm proud to have been part of. If I was starting again, I would think about all the things that we can use these devices in terms of improving people's quality of life, using technology in education. A lot of it's happening. I still don't think we've kind of found the secret sauce yet, so we've got to keep pushing, but I have no doubt that at some point this will become an even more valuable tool than it is today.
The patchwork of the system in Chicago in 1984, when I arrived on the scene, was something that we focused entirely on. I can remember getting in cars with our engineers and just pressing the send button, end button, send button, end button, and reporting where it worked and where it didn't. But of course, with 17 cell sites, it didn't work in most places.
Ladies and gentlemen, Raj Singh, Chairman and CEO of Telecom Ventures.
I'm going to go off script here just a little. I think it's a great idea that we should get our elected members for the House and Senate through a lottery. Anyway, in a way, you're going to see a video about Craig, my friend Craig, and his professional achievements and what he has done. But I want to spend a minute or two talking about Craig as a compassionate human being. Craig is a man of deep faith, very deep faith, and empathy which I have never seen so deep for other humans who are less fortunate than ourselves and him. I have never seen somebody carrying a ton-load of food to Haiti, personally himself, all the way there, spending all his time trying to nurture young people who can go through college and then be very successful adults and leaders. Craig also has some flaws. He is a tireless and a very perfectionist leader, which can be very painful for people around him. So when, and Daniel is laughing because he knows, when we were working on Mannesmann Mobile Funk application, which was to get a cellular license in Germany, I was part of the team. And I swear that those 1,500 pages, each paragraph you must have read 10 times and revised it 20 times. You are a fan, Craig. Craig is also a very simple person. I never seen him drink anything other than water, once in a while tea. And if you really want to hurt him, very simple. Feed him with either Indian or Chinese food. I almost killed him a couple of times, but didn't succeed, so it's too bad you're still here, man. Now, Craig also has a great capacity to help others to guide them, not just kind of. So my experience goes way back 30 years ago when I was an assistant professor at Kansas State University. And he picked me, Gerry store, good old Gerry, great man. He introduced us. So Craig tells me, he said, well, you know, this cellular protocol, my engineers have a hard time understanding him. So why don't you just figure out this protocol and write a flow chart? So I wrote a flow chart which ends from like one end of this room to the other. I send it back to him and he says, how many hours did you spend on it? I said, about 8 hours. He said, great. What are you going to charge? I said, well, I don't know, $40 an hour. So he wrote my first check for $320. Well, it turns out that he didn't stop there. He figured out that my wife and I kind of are good at algorithms and computers. So he said, well, why don't you guys write a software to design these networks? So we wrote what's known ANET at that time, which was only the independently available software to design networks. And Craig, thank you. That $320 and nurturing of that new software program, now after being involved in 32 startups, that's not a bad investment for $10 a startup. So thank you. So Craig has done a lot of things and you guys are going to hear about this. But end of the day, I think what Craig does is, he's like a little spark plug. I mean, he just creates a spark and goes away. And I think your sparks have created an immense contribution to wireless industry. So we thank for your friendship, Craig and Rinne, and congratulations. Please.
My name is Craig Farrill, and I'm the Chief Technical Officer for FirstNet, the First Responder Network Authority, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. From the beginning, as a young boy, I was interested in finding out how things worked, and was always inquisitive. Always wanted to know more about what made things tick. I took a lot of things apart. I got some of them back together. My first introduction to wireless as a working engineer was to work on base communications, which were for teams of mobile tactical people who were moving across a battlefield. You know, with the explosive growth that we had in the wireless industry, capacity was always something we were chasing. So we as an industry were looking for a way to grow the capacity, and we knew we needed to increase it dramatically.
We went through all kinds of debates about architecture. And I remember we had this interesting debate about whether CDMA was the emerging technology or not. Craig called an industry meeting in San Diego. We provided the frequencies, Qualcomm provided the equipment, and they evaluated the efficacy of CDMA versus TDMA and other technologies.
And that ultimately led to the formation of the CDMA Development Group, which was one of the organizations that helped accelerate digital transition in America and around the world. And I was privileged to be one of the two founders of that, along with Perry LaForge. The CDMA Development Group was really vital to having collaboration between carriers because it provided a place where carriers could get together and collaborate on the needs they had and what they were seeing from the community. One of the most heartbreaking things that I think we've experienced in American history was 9/11. You looked at the disarray on the ground and the ability to communicate, and you know, as an engineer and as a technology leader, my heart just sank, and I said, you know, this has got to be fixed. In 2012, Congress put in place the First Responder Network Authority, or FirstNet, and that network is dedicated to first responders and public safety. And I was privileged to be one of those board members with the opportunity to design, build, and operate a nationwide public safety network to answer that problem that I stood there and watched on 9/11. You know, one of the most important projects in my life was working with the San Francisco Rescue Mission. Pastor Roger Wong started a school about 12 years ago for kids in the Tenderloin. Roger invited me to come and help be the chairman of the board for the organization.
He brought someone to educate us on sponsorship, and we have been struggling up to that point. It really liberated us, not just for the school, but for the entire ministry.
Our school was on the brink of shutting down, and he came to us with a plan and a vision and a mission.
It's been a joy to work with them and see the school flourish. When we started, we had about 30 kids. School now has a capacity for 300 kids. I smile to think how these kids are going to have a future and they're going to have a hope because of this school and because of the people in that school who care for them. The need to communicate and the need to exchange information and the need to have tools is recognized by all people, all races, all nations. And it's compelling to think how those tools can make their way all over the world and impact society. My hope for the future of wireless is that we'll continue to make stronger, more connected families. We'll continue to make more productive workers so we can do more in less time. We'll continue to have more fun as a people and as a society. And so my hope is that they will do that in a positive way.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight. It's really humbling and deeply honoring to have the privilege to be recognized by the foundation. And I'm just extremely grateful for this chance to be here tonight and share a few words with you. They told me to keep it extremely short, so I'll do my best. That's not my spiritual gift, but I'll do my best. Over the past 30 years, it's been a joy to be part of this industry. Started back in '76 for me, a little we like to call before cellular, BC. Before cellular, things seemed a whole lot different. We had a few mobile phones in Arizona. I started with a business early in the 80s that had about 600 phones in the city of Phoenix, and it was a phenomenal thing. To think that we could be at the billions of devices we're at today. Clearly this industry has transformed the human race. It's touched almost 5 billion people. There really isn't another service that's done such a thing in the history of America and the history of humankind. And that transformation really comes with a lot of personal sacrifice, with a lot of vision, and a lot of energy among a few people. I think what Liz said is really right. A few people can make an enormous change in what's possible, both in the lives of people who have resources and also in the lives of the people who don't have them. So I'd like to thank hundreds of different people who've helped shape my career, and I've had the privilege of working with over the years. There's a few of them at my table tonight, and I wanted to give special recognition to them. My good friend Dr. Raj Singh, who is a brilliant engineer and a brilliant business mind, and has helped start this industry. It's been a privilege to work with him and grow up in this industry from young college guys and early in our careers. Perry LaForge is down here at the front as well. Perry's been leading the industry from the digital transition, from narrowband to the wideband to broadband over the past 20 years with the CDG. And it was a privilege, Perry, to sit back there in a restaurant back in 1993 and put this on a table napkin, and to still see it making a contribution today is fantastic. Sam Ginn is also at my table, and Sam is clearly one of my principal role models. He's been a role model for many other people in the wireless industry. And I'm forever grateful to Sam for giving me the opportunity as a young engineer out of Texas to come and design systems for what was then Pactel Mobile Access. And over the years, we touched 27 countries and built systems across the world in 6 continents, and it's been a fantastic ride. I consider these men to be friends, but I also consider them to be wireless heroes. They're folks who made a positive difference for millions of people because they took it seriously, because they cared about what happened to customers, and they cared about what it was going to take to make this the truly successful product that it's become. I think that their personal sacrifice really has changed the lives of all Americans and all people around the world. I just want to ask you to join me in a small round of applause for those men. Well, there's 3 other heroes who have supported me over the past 30 years as well. And that's my lovely wife over here, Raynell, and my daughter, Julie, and my son, Michael. And, so for many years, and I'll wrap this up, they're giving me the signal, I've been to presentations with a slide that says, "The future of wireless is bright." And I still believe it. And I think many of us around the room think this is really just the beginning of a wonderful future. There's a lot more good that the wireless can do for the poor, for the ill, for the unemployed, for the underserved in this country. Sam Penn and I are working on the FirstNet public safety network, and we hope to be able to bring a brand new broadband service to fire, police, and emergency medical, and that will save lives and property here in America and eventually around the world. And that's the kind of aspiration that fires up this industry, and it's the kind of thing that's made mountains move here in the wireless industry in the past. So tonight, I thank you for this honor very much, and I give all the glory to God for what He's done. May God continue to bless this industry, and God bless you all. Thank you.
But the highlight of my career began in 1985 when I left the traditional telephone companies and came into the wireless industry, called cellular at that time. When I joined Southwestern Bell Mobile Systems in 1985, we had 3,000 customers nationwide. We had about $3.5 million in annual revenues nationwide. And when I retired, we had 65 million customers and $50 billion in revenues.
Now please welcome the President and CEO of AT&T Mobility, Mr. Ralph de la Vega.
Good evening. Good evening. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here tonight, especially to induct my colleague, my friend, Kris Rinne, into the Wireless Hall of Fame. What a good day it is. Kris is currently the Senior Vice President of Network Technology and Product Planning for AT&T. She has previously served as the Chief Technology Officer for Singular Wireless and has held a number of other senior leadership roles at our company since she first started in 1976. Her rise to the top started with humble beginnings, though, in a one-room schoolhouse where her mother was one of her first teachers. Kris's early dream, believe it or not, was to become a basketball coach and a math teacher. But a college professor recognized her passion and talent for engineering, and he convinced her to interview at Southwestern Bell, and that was the end of the story. She began as a special service engineer in Kansas and worked her way up through a variety of assignments and finally joined wireless in 1992. I first met Kris when I became the Chief Operating Officer for Singular Wireless in 2004. I remember I came into the meeting, and according to Kris, who reminds me about this often, I said that to a group of technologists in our organization that I didn't like technologists who told me that it could not be done. I like technologists who told me that it can be done, and that is the symbol that Kris Rinne is for. Because as long as I gave her things to do, she always found a way to get them done. Kris has been at the forefront of the mobile broadband revolution. It was Kris who led AT&T to be the first carrier in the world to launch HSDPA in a wide commercial way. It was Kris who certified the first iPhone on AT&T's network. And it was Kris who architected what I think is one of the finest 4G LTE networks in the world, using something that nobody knew if it would ever work, circuit switch fallback. You don't need to know what that is other than it makes the voice portion work. And we wondered at the time, like many of you pioneers in the audience, when you throw the switch, will it work? It worked. But the message behind all of those is that not only was she the first woman to accomplish all of these feats, but she was also the first person to do so. And she's proven time and time again that with the right vision, the right planning, and the right leadership, you can overcome almost any challenge. If I was to tell you one story about Kris and I, it's a story about trust. And you know, when you have trust with a person, and I've developed that trust working with her nearly 10 years now, you can rely on Kris when she tells it to you straight that something either is going to work or it's not going to work, and you can rely on that person. That is absolutely priceless in our industry. But I can also tell you a story at a time where she wasn't sure whether she could trust me. You see, when we did the deal with the iPhone, I was lucky enough to go to Cupertino, and Steve Jobs allowed me to see the first prototype of the iPhone, but I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement that I would not tell my CEO, my board, or my CTO at the time what the phone looked like. So as soon as I got back, the first question I was asked was, what's it look like? And of course I couldn't tell them, but a few days later, Jobs calls me and tells me, look, I need the specs for how you build the radio in this device. I got the device, but I need to make sure the radio works in your network. So I told Kris, send me the specs for our technical acceptance procedures, and I shot them over to Steve. Got a call about 5 minutes later going, hey, I showed you the phone. The thing doesn't have a keyboard, but the first 100 pages of your technical spec are all about the keyboard. So I said, oh, forget about those 100 pages, Steve. Don't worry about them. You don't have to comply with them. Well, the word got through the Apple lower ranks. They came back to AT&T. Next thing is Kris Rinne's in my office saying, you sold us out. You told Apple that they don't have to comply. I said, Kris, trust me. The first 100 pages are all about the keyboard. We don't need those pages. and believe it or not, I was building on that trust with Kris. When many of you who are in the audience, you sense that moment in time when you're sensing that the industry is about to change in a big way, and she has been there all along. But Kris is not only special, but for what she's done, but also for how she's done it. I think anyone who knows Kris will tell you that she has an infectious laugh, and I hope that she shows it tonight. It's rare to see her without a smile. No matter how difficult the problem is, she always has a smile. She's active in the community as a volunteer for the United Way. She is part of the choir of her church. She really devotes a lot of time to her alma mater, Washburn University, where she serves as the board of trustees. And her love of technology is perhaps only exceeded by her love of sports. A former basketball player, Kris represents AT&T every year in presenting the Naismith Trophy to the best women's college basketball player in the nation. Well, tonight, Kris, it's your turn to accept the award. And I can't think of a more deserving person to be inducted in this Hall of Fame. So on behalf of everyone at AT&T and everyone here tonight, it's my honor to introduce a true friend and a true pioneer, Kris Rinne. Let's watch the film.
I grew up in Northeast Kansas in a very rural community, and I attribute my father for giving me that desire to understand how things work. And I attribute my mother for giving me some of those skills to learn how things work, because she was my elementary school teacher for 4 of my first 6 years, including a couple years in a one-room country schoolhouse. I am a graduate from Washburn University in Topeka, Kansas, and I was a math major. And I was very interested in teaching in a rural environment like I grew up in, and participating in coaching women's sports and being part of the whole Title IX evolution, etc. And I was working for the head of the math department of Washburn University, and he scheduled an interview for me to meet with the Southwestern Bell Telephone recruiter. And then in the spring, they offered me a job with Southwestern Bell Telephone doing special services engineering work. I moved to wireless in 1992. My team was responsible for the implementation of our first digital technologies. There was so much growth and so many positive things that you could do in terms of building out that network and starting to have very positive experiences for customers, and just beginning to understand that freedom when you would be able to do wireless technologies. When I moved to Southwestern Bell Mobile Systems headquarters and started participating in some industry forums like CTIA, I was often the only female, particularly from a technology standpoint. I attribute both Southwestern Bell, Singular, and AT&T and that whole family of companies of encouraging that and developing across a very diverse population. Then in the 2001-2002 timeframe, by that time we had created Singular Wireless. The ability to compete from a national scope when you had so many different technologies was beginning to get rather challenging. So then we began looking at how could we drive a business case around beginning to introduce data technologies as well as high-quality voice technologies. And that led my team to begin the implementation in terms of the 3G network. You continue to move forward, adding enhancements to that, the HSDPA Plus capabilities, and then comes the initial offerings in terms of smartphone capabilities. And that eventually drove our team to look in terms of how do we introduce that next generation of technology. So the implementation of LTE that ultimately evolved to 4G in the Americas. I enjoy biking and also just walking. I'm an alto in the Johnson Ferry Baptist Choir. Singing in the Johnson Ferry Choir is challenging from the standpoint that we do all of our singing on Sunday or for special events without music. So we do have words in the back of the auditorium, but you have to memorize those notes each week. I just love the experience in terms of bringing those things all together and just making something marvelous. I see wireless emerging in two different areas, continuing to penetrate different emerging devices in terms of where do you find that wireless connectivity. And then the other area that I think we need to solve as an industry is how you make that easy to operate between the licensed and the unlicensed technologies. How do you make Wi-Fi very secure, and that integration with those licensed technologies so that it becomes more seamless for customers to connect however, wherever, whenever they want to. I think as you look at the 35 years that I've been in telecommunications, it's just been a phenomenal growth period where it just changes the way we do everything. And I've just had the thrill of having the opportunity inside of the AT&T family of companies to lead very broad teams that drove wireless transformation and introduced many of these new technologies, and it's just been a thrilling experience. Well, this afternoon I thought I'd sit back a little while and think about the last 35 years and just jot down a few people that I'd like to thank for everything they did to bring to this point. Go ahead, have another cup of coffee, we're fine. But seriously, we talk about these as individual contributions, but this is really a team sport that we participate in. And so when I reflect on that, I look at strong bosses, CEOs, that challenge you, stretch you, and believe in you when you come in with that next billion-dollar proposals. So I've had the honor to work with such gentlemen as Stan Sigmund, Ralph Della Vega, John Donovan, who are just incredible leaders in terms of the vision that they have and the talent that they drive. Very talented co-workers like Bill Hope, Scott Mayer, Mark Collins, Glenn Laurie, that join forces with you, and they add value to every solution that your team brings forward, and they help drive that to completion. I've had some very empowered teams that work long hours to solve some incredible issues, to drive standards, to work with our vendor partners, to constantly innovate and to laugh together, and sometimes cry together just a little bit. And I've had loving family and friends. They've known me for a long time. They've seen me do some really stupid things, and they love me anyway, and they believe in me. And they listen, and they comfort, and they challenge. My brother Bob and his wife Peggy, and two incredible kids, Nicole and Chaz, my sister Nancy, are all here with us this evening, and then a really good friend of mine, Donna Beast, who surprised me, have all been very strong supporters in everything that we've done. So I thank you for this honor. I thank you for the industry that we represent. I thank you for the partners that I have in this room that have helped build and be a part of this career. And I am thrilled about the way we impact the way people live, work, and play every day, and what we're going to drive in that next generation of technologies, that next generation of capabilities. Thank you very much.
The development of the industry was really a unique period of time in which a bunch of people who were genuine entrepreneurs, either within a telephone company environment or in a broader industry context, came together. And frankly, a lot of those people were crazy. We ended up in the middle of the night going over design plans, going over various kinds of projects and marketing plans. Things that were done were done on many cases on propelled purely by caffeine and lack of sleep.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chairman of OpenNet Telecom and a member of the Board of XG Technology, Mr. Gary Cuccio.
It will be my honor to introduce my old friend and colleague George Schmitt this evening. But first let me thank the Wireless History Foundation, in particular Liz Maxwell, for a lovely and elegant dinner. I'd also like to recognize some of George's family, his lovely wife Claire this evening, his son George and his wife Jen, and his daughter Joan Schmitt Martinez. As I thought about the evening, I wanted to cast about for a word, a single word that would describe George and what I've seen him do in wireless. Several words came to mind, certainly smart, hardworking, leadership, all were there. However, the word that was foremost was passion. I'd like to describe to you now a little about George's passion and how he brings it to work every day. Because I swore that I would never tell a particular story about George, this will have to be in the form of a parable. Now, it's a little parable about golf. They say golf doesn't build character, it simply uncovers it. So let's imagine a golfer. He's on the Monterey Peninsula, he's playing in a tournament, and let's say this golfer through the first 5 holes is even par. Something that rarely happens to George. And as he gets to the tee on the 6th hole, tees the ball up, takes out his driver, gives it a mighty whack, the ball shoots out of there like a bullet! Down about 100 yards down the fairway is a tree with one small limb. Of course, the ball strikes the limb, immediately goes out of bounds. Now, for the average golfer, you know, this would be upsetting, and they might utter a small curse. For some golfers with slightly more temper, perhaps they would throw a club down the fairway. But not our passionate golfer, not someone with real passion. No, they might tear the bag, their golf bag, off the back of the cart and throw the whole thing over the out-of-bounds fence. My friends, that's the sort of passion it takes to build the world's first GSM network. Now, with all parables, of course, there's a moral to the story. And the moral, George, you might want to pay attention to this one, is if you're going to toss your clubs over the fence, make sure there's a gate close by, because it can be a very long walk to get them back. Please now welcome George Schmitt in this small short video.
I grew up in Westchester County, went to school there. When I was 18, I ended up coming out to California to go to St. Mary's College. I went to work for the phone company in 1965 and became an officer around 1984 of what was then Pacific Telesis. So in December of 1989, Pacific Telesis, with a company called Mannesmann in Germany, won the license to be the first competitor to Deutsche Telekom. The European Union at the time had decided that all the countries in the Union were going to use a new standard that had been developed about 3 years earlier called GSM. I got sent over to Germany and we built the world's first digital cellular system, or mobile system as I prefer to call it. They really hadn't worked through any of the issues. So in some ways it was pretty damn scary because we were going to put $1 billion into this business before we really knew that everything was going to work. We had delays of about a year until one day the Minister of Communications in Germany, Schwarzschilling, gave us permission to launch a network with or without the European Union's blessing. We got that network up and made the first international calls in early June of 1992. AirTouch spun off of Pacific Telesis around 1993. And was the biggest wireless operator in the world at the time. I became the head of international operations and built networks in 10 countries around the world, including the first CDMA network in the world in Korea. OmniPoint was something that could only have happened in the late 90s. We built a network that was about 40 feet off the ground, and we used flat panel antennas so people didn't know where the hell we were. And it allowed us to have huge capacity and avoid the interference that happened with the high networks. We got involved in the auctions in 1996, bought licenses for about 100 million pops, and raised and spent $4 billion without ever turning a profit.
This is OmniPoint.
Omni was our advertising bird at OmniPoint. Even though parrots are a pain in the backside, he did enough work for us so that he got his own room when we built this house. Well, Claire and I have been married for almost 48 years. We had 3 children and we have 6 grandkids now. Claire and I raced our first horse a little over 10 years ago, and we got the bug, me much more than Claire. You feel like you're 16 years old again. I mean, you got butterflies, you're nervous. I like breeding my own horses, and we'll know how good we are at it in another year. By another year from now, we'll know. I do play a little golf, and I love just being up here at Lake Tahoe. I had always been looking for technologies that would replace GSM and CDMA. I listened to the XG story at the time. I decided I'd go back to work again and that we would invest in this company. And it's been over 3 years, and we finally have a working cognitive radio system. I think the first thing that was really surprising was when short message service texting became so dominant so quickly in Europe. And I guess now my biggest surprise is, and it's especially true in New York City, people come down out of the tall buildings and they're watching a damn TV show on their smartphone, and I just sit there and go, how did the world get this way? When I was growing up, we didn't have TV yet. The wireless industry has already done a lot to change the world. But I think even more will happen over the next 10 and 20 years. I know that there are things I'm not even thinking about today that'll happen in the wireless world. And it'll be people that are in their 30s and 40s today that'll invent those things. And they will make significant changes in the world as well.
I'm standing between you and a cocktail party, but tonight I'm standing between you and bed. So I'll be kind of brief. Sam Ginn, you're probably the first person in the history of the world to have two fledglings end up getting into the Wireless Hall of Fame on the same night. Thanks for giving both Craig and I the chance. It is really special, and thank you. And thank you to the Foundation for giving us this honor tonight, all of us. Pi, that's my wife's nickname. Her name is really Mary Claire, proper Irish girl. She probably heard more ass chewings than the rest of the world put together from this big Schmitt disturber from time to time. And she has stood by me for 48 years, and hopefully we got lots more coming, Pi. But thank you for everything. I learned how to drink aquavit in the early 90s when I was over in Germany. And I was just shocked tonight to see a guy who was on his hands and knees with me and Lars Romquist trying to figure out how the hell you're going to make handovers work in a GSM network. And Jan Udenfeld, for you, my friend, who has been working with us to push this damn technology for the last 20 plus years, thank you very much for everything. Here's to you, man. From Ericsson for the tough days. I remember the day that I was going to have to call Sam and Lee Cox up and say, Lars was down to see me, Romquist, and told me we were going to have to work. And we developed this fancy contract that had a $1 billion mark penalty in it if they didn't deliver on time. We lost our license. So Lars was walking me along the Rhine and explaining all these problems, and I said, well, Lars, the first thing I'm going to do is fire your ass when I take over Ericsson, meaning AirTouch at the time, Sam, not meaning us. And he looked at me in shock, and he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, that $1 billion mark's going to get your butt fired, and I'm going to be on your board, and you're gone. So they figured out how to make it work, and Sam came over to Germany and made the first call to Jan Franklin, our then Secretary of Commerce, from the banks of the Rhine in Dusseldorf, and GSM was on its way. And it's kind of nice that as individuals we get honored, but every one of us in this industry knows it took thousands and thousands of other people to make the changes that have happened in this world over the last 20 years. We may get picked out and we may get honored, but I know that there are over 20,000 people working in Germany now for Vodafone that did every bit of this. We may have had the vision, but they did the hard work, and the same thing happened in every company I was ever in around the world. But you know, I had an old German guy tell me, his name was Erhard Meixner. Erhard's still alive, he's 91 now, it's a little tough. And after we got the network launched in Germany, and it was a big struggle, he used to come up to me and say, George, you know, you've just done great, you get all the credit for all this. And I finally said, Meixner, we did this in German. Mike said, what the hell are you talking about? It took all of us to do this. He says, yeah, but the way you figure out who gets the credit is figure out who would get the blame if it didn't work. And I've never forgotten that because when you sit there and say, okay, who the hell was going to get fired by AirTouch if it didn't work? I know who that guy was. And Sam and Dr. Dieter and I, we've all made all that stuff seem funny now. But I will tell you a little story about getting type approval. Now, the FCC certification process is difficult here. Let me tell you what's really hard, trying to get type approval on something in the European Union. Some of you have heard about Godsend mobiles. There really were buttons made that were all over Europe. And Claire and I found a few of those sitting around the house today that I could bring here and show you. The type approval was really difficult there because all the big guys didn't want the little guys to get anything going. So Schwartz Schilling told us we could go do what we wanted. I went over to Brussels. The French still hate me like they hate most Americans. The communications minister was a guy named Peter Carpentier. And so I go over there and say, Schwartz Schilling said I could turn on the network and I'm going to do it. Because he said, well, why are you going to do that? I said, well, we got $1 billion invested in Germany and network's up and you clowns over here in Brussels are making sure we don't get type approval. So he called in a Danish guy named Jürgen Richter and said, what the hell is he talking about? I said, well, you know, we have to get type approval rate, 488 tests or something like that. So we got that done, and Schwartz Schilling forced Deutsche Telekom to support us in the vote, which was won by 1 vote. And the world started to change with digital technology. CDMA did the same thing here in the United States. Craig Farrill and I have had wars about which one is better for years, but tonight we had a drink together and said, you know what, that's all in the past. So understand that both technologies have contributed immensely to the changes that all of us have seen in the world over the last 20 plus years. But as I look around the world, by the way, I do fail at things once in a while. I've tried retirement 4 times and I've failed 4 times. I guess, Claire, you're going to have to figure out that I'm going to work till the day I die because I can't figure out what else to do, even though I love my horses, as you know, and we have plenty of them, and I love beating the people from the Middle East in horse races. It feels so good. But, you know, about 3 years ago, Claire and I started to invest a hunk of money and a lot of time in trying to solve a problem that we all know exists today, and that's a shortage of spectrum. Now, we can sit around and argue with the government all we want to here or anywhere else in the world that, you know, just take all the military spectrum away and clear it and then go let the big operators have more of the same stuff. That can't work anymore. We have enough problems in the world to not burden politicians with trying to solve problems that can be solved other ways. So I spend a lot of time, and a lot of my colleagues from XG Technology are here. And I guess I can say this because it's way past the market close. Yesterday we shipped our first system of shared spectrum technology, cognitive radio technology, from XG to a customer that'll be installing it over the next month. What that allows us to do, instead of trying to clear spectrum and do what all of us did when we were growing up in this industry, it allows frequencies that are used by others to be used when they're not used by the military, who has most of them around the world, and make it work. And make it work with the same experience you have with the GSM or CDMA network. It's the only way in the long run that we're going to get the capacity that we need in this world, everywhere in this world, to let people do what they want to do with wireless technology. And I'm going to spend the rest of my living days working on that and making sure it comes to fruition. So to all of you, thanks so much for listening, and thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. And Pi, you're my number one. Thank you.
And now, to close the evening, Wireless History Foundation Director, Rob McKaylee of Mobilisphere Holdings.
They are among us, and they have been all evening, and I'd like them to stand now, all of the members of the Wireless Hall of Fame who are with us tonight, so that we may recognize all of those who have been recognized before. So stand up wherever you are. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Wireless History Foundation, I would like to especially welcome the new inductees tonight to the Hall of Fame. I would also like to recognize the folks that make all this possible. It does take quite a bit of effort, and I know she's been up here tonight, but we owe a great debt to Liz Maxfield, our Executive Director. Her able partner in crime, Linda Levens. And there is an incredible group of volunteers that really do back this up so that this all comes together without a hitch. And so let's give them a round of applause. So nothing happens without some effort. And over the past 3 cycles of nomination, the board member that has been leading the selection committee in the selection process has had a very difficult job in terms of shaping the way we do this and the way we do it in a way that is both fair and appropriate. And I'd like to recognize kind of the pioneer in making this all work, my board colleague, Charlene Townsend. Hopefully he's gone up there. I can't see a thing. The selection committee consists of a subset of the members of the Hall of Fame who rotate on terms through membership in the committee. And although they're not here tonight, I would like to recognize the members of the selection committee who rotated off 1 cycle ago, or 2 cycles ago. Those members being Tom Wheeler and Morgan O'Brien. So let's recognize them in absentia. Now, nominations for the Hall of Fame come from you and from the broader community, and we encourage everyone who thinks that they have a deserving person to submit a nomination. The process is completely open. You can get nomination forms at our website, which is wirelesshistoryfoundation.org. Nominations are due, I think, January 31st, and this is the last thing that you're going to have to remember tonight, and that is that the date for this dinner in 2014, recognizing new members of the Hall of Fame, is September 9th, 2014. With that, I thank you all for supporting us, and I wish you all a good night and safe.